thank you, Will, for taking time for the podcast, inshallah, and just sharing your experiences. I'm hoping that a lot of people who see this will benefit. Because pre-dental is not really a defined path. There's like different ways to get to dental school, different sequences you take your classes, and different approaches to studying and stuff like that. So I thank you for taking the time. And I have a list of questions I'll ask you, but the first one is really just take a moment to introduce yourself to my audience. Your name, your background, where you're at right now, and any good news you have to share, and inshallah we'll take it from there.
All right, yeah, my name is Williams Serrano. Um, my Muslim name is Waleed. If you're wondering, I converted to Islam in 2019, um, during the last 10 days of Ramadan of that year. I went to undergraduate school in New Jersey, which was Montclair State University, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree in science, specifically biology. Um, my initial goal right after school was to get into dental school, but obviously due to certain circumstances, you just kind of I had to take a whole different route, go make money first, and then pretty much come back to what was my actual vision, which is now dental school. I am now fully committed to Temple Dental School in Philly, and inshallah, like we'll see how it goes from there.
MashaAllah, man. Nah, I'm definitely because we know each other personally, but my other guests actually have not to say I don't know them at all, but they've been people I either met like through professional connections or we met at like Muslim events. But you're the first person who I personally know, and I just want to say like I'm very proud of you, proud to know you, good guy, and proud that you got into Temple Dental School. MashaAllah, it's a good school, and just best of luck there. So, I wanted to ask you went to Montclair State University. What did you major in, and what was it like going to school there? Like, do you think you were set up for success, or do you feel like you had to really struggle?
Um, I'm gonna be very real with you. I think Montclair State, uh, it does set you up for success, but I kind of had to delay myself quite a bit and really go through some hurdles because of my high school. My high school like really didn't prep me enough in terms of my SAT and my ACT. Um, Even after paying for like those programs and whatnot, it just wasn't enough in terms of uh getting a good enough score, I presume.
Yeah,
Um, and when I started at Montclair, actually, uh, I started off as undecided. Like I couldn't actually go into a major directly because of my SAT score. Ironically enough, the following semester, they were like, yeah, we're removing that whole thing. Like you don't even have to send your scores. You can just go into your program, we'll just look at your GPA, right?
yeah,
Um, so I was like, wow, like I kind of got rocked in that one, like I had to go through a whole term undecided, and then at the end of my first year, that's when I like had to go into the bio department and be like, hey, like this is the major that I want, and like, take the prereqs and all that. But nonetheless, like they were kind of very easy to work with. Um, so like if I had certain classes that I needed to take that weren't fulfilled or prerequisites, they pretty much, as long as you kind of like really fought for it,
yeah.
right? Like you kind of just pestered them a little bit, they just give it to you, right? They were very easy to just be like, yeah, like they'd be like, nah, like we can't do that, bypasses or whatever. They'll be like, and then they'll be like, all right, realistically, we could get this done. You just got to do this, but it's gonna take a while. And I'll be like, all right, sure, I'll just go do that. So I ended up taking like my first semester as a declared degree, I think like 17 credits, and all of them were just prereqs. Like they weren't even like to my actual degree yet. It was just to start my degree.
Wow.
So I didn't really get to the chance to actually do anything up until my sophomore year.
Gotcha.
Um,
Thanks, man. That's annoying because they take your money, but then they go like you can't really work towards a degree that
yeah,
you pay for.
and the whole reason like I wanted to get through is because I wanted to finish in 4 years.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, but like I had, alhamdulillah, it was pretty much paid for. Like my all 4 years was pretty much paid for, except for maybe my last term. But yeah, financial aid like literally covered all of it, and I even got like a money like every semester in return, like somewhere between like 4 to 6 grand.
Nice, mashallah, man. Yeah, I got, the Pell Grant and the NJ tag and even the Rutgers, the Rutgers aid grant, and that really helps. Um, yeah. So did you work during college or were you just committed to the education?
I was really committed to the education, but when I needed to, I did work. So not like so I come from a very basically underprivileged background. I'm very much Salvadoran, and I'm the first to go to a university, so I'm very much a first generation. But the only working person is my stepfather. So if we needed a little extra cash, I would do stuff around my block or with my landlord, or work with my father for like a summer and make extra money. But if I needed to during that time, I pretty much would work during the weekend of my school term. So, but majority of the time, I really was focused and dedicated into my school because that was like what my parents was like pushing for.
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Um, so in terms of undergrad, right? Like you had to do the pre-dental classes. Outside of your courses, and you can also list like the major science requirements you took. Were you involved in any clubs, internships, research? And if you were, were they through the school? How did you get them? What was that like?
So, because of my situation, I didn't really get to do as much research, right? The most of the research that I did was either for a class or just something that I kind of wanted to do in order to just talk, like have a topic to talk about, like with my professors, like in my spare time. And actually, one of the things that I wanted to do with Temple was that they have a research program, and I wrote a paper on the coevolution of oral microbiome, and I was hoping to continue that research in that program in that school. They have an actual study already made in place for that. So I was like, all right, like it works perfectly. I could just working with someone else, pretty much do the studies and all that. I was in a few clubs, but I wasn't as active because like I said, I was really just focused on my school. For me, it didn't for the most part, I didn't see it as important as doing the volunteer work or the clinical experience that I need to get, as opposed to the academic or the school aspects of it. So other than uh, the clubs, I did volunteer a lot at the Newark University Hospital. I spent 3 years volunteering there in the oral surgery department.
Wow, man, that's amazing. And it's funny you mentioned University Hospital. I actually run the internship through the Department of Emergency Medicine, the research associate program. So it's funny that we're both involved there.
Yeah,
What clubs were you in, by the way, if I may ask? Just curious.
it was just the basic clubs, like bio club, chem club. We
Oh,
just like,
oh wow. No,
yeah.
that's funny. That's funny, man. No, that's standard, man. And did you build any relationships in these clubs? Like, is there anyone who you met in the club who you were not classmates with that maybe you built a relationship with? You guys are still friends, anything like that? Like, was
Yeah,
there value there?
a lot of people that really went into these clubs, a good portion of them were like already science majors, but like a really big portion of them had nothing to do with anything science related. They were either like, I don't know, like they could have been like in religious like in a religion major, or they could have been a communications major, history major, and then like they were just there to just enjoy their time and learn a little bit more about science, right? Because like the main goal of the club was pretty much make it fun. So you'd pretty much design your own like basically your own soap. Like you learned how to do your own soap through the chem club. The chem club was always making some wacky stuff. It was kind of it was kind of cool. And they were always like doing like a lot of demonstrations, like freezing things instantaneously and then melting it like almost instantaneously. It was and like pretty much applying it into the real world. And I thought like that's kind of fascinating. Like, you know, you
It's
take
fascinating.
one aspect of thermodynamics and you're just applying it into the real world and not just like whatever it is you're trying to learn, right? So I thought that was pretty cool.
No, that sounds cool, man. I'm with you.
Um, but yeah, like in terms of the interpersonal relationships, I honestly I was just so passionate about like whatever they were doing that I just gave off that really nice vibe, and I'd be like, "Yo, isn't that dope?" Like I would be like, "Yo, that's fucking awesome." And like they would like chime in and all that, and I'll be like, "Oh man." And then it's like that's kind of like how the things start, right? Like
Yeah,
it just takes like one person to just be like, "Oh, isn't that dope?" Like just one question, one single question, and then you all of a sudden you just formed into this other deep like friendship or interpersonal relationship or a network. It's awesome.
nice, mashallah. So let me ask you something, right? Could you list off, because I haven't been pre-med in years and I know pre-dental is different. Could you list off like the prerequisites you took and then also share the sequence? Like, did you cram it in the beginning? Because I know some people try to do, they try to do all the pre-med or pre-dental stuff in like 2 years, and then their last year is just like all their major classes. But some people do it longitudinally, where like every year, even up until like literally the last semester, they're still taking the pre-med classes.
Yeah.
What was your sequence like?
Well, because I'm a bio major, everything is pretty much set up linearly, right? Like in a pretty much in a direct line. But all for dental school specifically, every program only requires you a year's worth of sciences, right?
Yeah.
So it's 2 semesters of bio, which is like intro bio 1 and 2, 2 semesters of Gen Chem, which is intro Gen Chem 1 and 2, and intro to organic chemistry, which is 1 and 2, right? But in terms of my school, the way it's set up is you can only do organic chemistry if you completed the first year of general chemistry. So essentially, you'd probably have to do 2 years in the sciences, right?
Yeah.
But you could be majoring something else. Like there's a bunch of dental students that are actually history majors or English majors, and they just did like maybe like a year's worth of sciences throughout like you both throughout what is spring, winter, and the summer and the fall,
Mhm.
right? So they could have split it up evenly like that. Um and again, the every school just requires bio 1 and 2, Gen Chem 1 and 2, organic chemistry 1 and 2, uh your intro English classes 1 and 2, right? The and math, right? And the math is either uh what is it, calculus 1 and biostats, or calculus 1 and 2, right? And each school, depending on the program that you're applying to, they either prefer biostats or they prefer calculus 2. And some schools just don't care, right? They just want to know that you did math.
Yeah.
Um there are some programs that ask for more, such as like human anatomy and physiology.
I
They
think
could
Rutgers does that. I think Rutgers more requires anatomy. Side intro. Continue.
no, you're good. Another one they could ask for is like biochemistry. They could ask for microbiology. Um, and some schools actually ask for now sociology or psychology. Like
Wow.
if you've taken 1 semester of that. So it's really like they're just asking for a little bit more now so that you can have that diversity to you. But depending on what you do as a major is insignificant to the school because they just want to see that you're a good candidate and that you've pretty much have a good realm of science,
Yeah. Yeah.
basic sciences, because they're gonna teach you all of that in school.
And
right?
that's the key takeaway, right? I want to interject and just make it very clear. Your major does not matter. What matters is the prerequisites. What matters is the GPA. So some people think that if they do a harder major, the schools will take that into account. But the guy who did engineering with a 3.5 and the English or art major with the 3.7, 3.8, that guy is going to have the edge over the engineer because your major is your choice. Your major is your choice. It's not the school's choice. So if you opt to do a harder major and unfortunately that hurts you, they're going to go with the art guy. They're going to go with the philosophy guy. Not to mention the guy with the other perspective is going to add some diversity to the class, some new way of thinking, and they want that innovation happening under their roof. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's something to make clear because I've seen biomedical engineers, NJIT, who they've struggled, and then they're upset to see the philosophy guy getting in. But it all comes down to GPA, as Brother Waleed said.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I'm honestly like a prime example of that, right? Like I went into bio, I have a good GPA, but my DAT score was not there, right? I took it twice, mind you. So the first attempt, it didn't go so well. I had studied the wrong way actually. And we'll get more into depth later on in this podcast, but and I did horribly. When I went to apply and ask deans of admissions like what I should do, they pretty much just said like don't even apply. Like your score is just like below average. And I was like, wow, okay. Um
Don't,
so
don't apply now or don't apply ever.
like like you gotta retake your exam.
Okay, okay.
You have to.
Yeah.
Um in order to be competitive. So uh what's important here is that, right, even if I was a bio major, I know other people who also are like even harder majors, right? They're like what is it? It's an engineering, it's a new engineering program. Rutgers has it. It's like biomedical engineering. There we go. Right, biomedical engineering. I know that's like one of the roughest like majors out there, especially at Rutgers, right? I know a few people who did that, took the DAT, and they were still average. And it's like you took a really hard class, right? You took a really hard major. You should be expected to perform extremely well on this exam. Essentially, that's what you're pretty much trying to say, right? You studied 4 years of this, and you take this entrance exam, and you're telling me you're doing average. That's kind of it's a red flag, and it's one of the dean of admissions actually at Rutgers told me that these are the type of red flags that they notice.
Yeah.
If you have a really high GPA at your university and a really low DAT score, they're like, all right, something's not adding up. So
Interesting.
they'll look into it more, right? And not in a good way. Like they now they have a red flag, right? And this is kind of like, all right, this is kind of sketchy, right? Like we're not really sure about this student now.
Yeah.
Um, but whereas if you were an English major or a philosophy major or an art major, communication major, and you did slightly above average, you have leeway, right? You're not expected to know this like in great detail, but you pretty much know that the basics enough to like get into this program and you have potential.
Yeah.
It's also a really good conversation starter during your interviews. So if you were an English major, to be like, why English? Like what about it interested you? And then you could figure out how you could take that major and like apply it into the career that you're trying to choose.
Yeah.
Right. You mingle it, and this is where the creativity must occur. Right. And this creativity, that's where they see more potential.
Yeah.
Right. So those are really key factors.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
um, another really important thing is when you do apply and you get an interview, like you're getting an interview for a reason, right? They
Yeah.
like you, they liked you on paper. Now all they want to do is just talk to you. They just want to see if you're a person. So as an oral surgeon once told me, he was like, if you get an interview, you're 90% there. Like you've already been accepted, essentially. The only way you could mess up is if you're really, really weird. Like I'm talking about Jeffrey Dahmer weird.
Yeah, that's what the bar is, right? You have to
Yeah.
be that.
So like you can't say anything like, "Oh, I love blood," or like I like cutting people up, right? You have to be, you know, kind of reasonable within your logic, right?
Yeah.
Just the creativity, the science. Um, you could even say something about like what the program has to offer, right? In terms of research in the future of medicine,
Hmm.
right? So it's not just like well, the career, but the growth in and of itself of your career, right?
Oh, that's definitely all of that is definitely key. And um, let me ask you, what? So after you graduated college, what did you fill your time with between college and dental school? Because I know personally, but I have to ask because these people don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So after college, well, I didn't go into dental school directly because my first attempt at my exam wasn't that great. And at this point, I had developed test anxiety, so I never really took my exam again. Um, so as most people do after they graduate, it's hard to find a job.
Yeah, with a bio degree, yeah, no, there's
With
a
a,
lot
with a with a basic bio degree, it is very difficult to find a job. If I was a biochem major or a chem major, and I graduated in that, it'd be easy to work in like the cosmetic industry, the food industry. Um,
L'Oreal is right here in Jersey. Clark and Johnson and
yeah,
Merck and all those guys are, Central Jersey. So
yeah, it's easy to work in like a big pharma company. But luckily I was a people person, so I kind of networked and I hit one of my friends, and I remember him like asking, like he was offering a job a year prior. And I asked him and I was like, "Hey, like, do you have a job at your lab?" And he was like, "Yeah, like I can get you an interview." He offers me the interview, and funny enough, um, the lab director was like, "Yeah, you interview him." So my friend ended up being my interviewer, and he ended up saying, he was like, "Yeah, I pretty much already hired you. Like like, there's no reason to interview you. I already know you." Like, he's like, "I know your work ethic." So he was like, "All right, um, and he offered me a position as a cytogenetics technologist. Um, I was making minimum wage. I was making like $15 an hour with a degree, but I was getting that experience, right? Which to me, I thought was way more important. I thought this would be like if dental school didn't work out, like this would be the career path to choose, right? They like cytogenetic technologists make decent money, but I just knew that I have to go through a certain time before that could occur. Like I just needed to gain the experience, the time, and the effort.
and
And
that's definitely key. That's definitely key, right? Is like I think there's a certain maturity that working in the real world gives people. And I think when you're working in healthcare, you get to study relationships that you aren't taught in school. So I mean what the lab does, why it does, rationale, like you kind of learn these things. Why are tests being ordered? Why are we testing this? Behind the scenes. It gives you a better appreciation for the paraprofessionals. Like when you're a dentist, or a doctor or anything that the people watching become, you're gonna have a better, I guess, appreciation for the folks in the lab, the folks in pathology, because now you kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. And it's not that you order something stat and they're not doing it.
yeah,
They're usually, and you might have seen this. I feel like labs are notoriously backed up or overwhelmed.
oh, very much so. There's always mistakes that happen, not major mistakes, but like there's certain mistakes where maybe I use not enough blood, so I have to go back and redo the test with more blood, or I didn't drop enough cells into a slide, so then I have to like do more slides and go back, and it's kind of like a backtrack and all that when it should have been done like 2 days prior, right? Um, so it does take give gave me a really good sense of appreciation for that. Um, but yeah, and then after that, I worked in that lab for about 2 years from 2019 up until I think 2022. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So you graduated 2019?
Yeah, I graduated in 2019. I actually worked there until 2021,
Gotcha.
like
Gotcha.
2021 of March.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then after that, I think you took off to study for your exam, right?
Yeah, after working there for some time, I realized, you know, this isn't like as much as I could make a good career out of this. I knew I just wasn't going to be content because I knew I could have just I knew I could have done something more.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave my job and I'm taking the money that I saved up and I'm wholeheartedly dedicating my whole time of money into investing in this class. It was by Dr. Romano, right? He's also known as Orgo Man. Uh, I paid $3,000 for his course, right? It's a
Yeah.
very small, intimate course. It was via Zoom. If it's not Zoom, you have to drive over to Long Island.
Oh,
But nonetheless, this guy was legit. I'm talking like a majority of all his students score top 1%.
wow.
Like he is he as he says, he's like you may, and he's very blunt, right? Um he's like you and I quote, so part of my language, he's like you fuckers like think this is like a game, right? He's like you are going to work with people, right? Um if you think this is overkill, then you are not meant for dental school. If you think this course is overkill to take a entrance exam, just give up on your career because you're not going to make it in dental school,
Oh,
right?
he kept it real.
Yeah, he was very real. And if you weren't participating in his class, he's like, "What are you doing in my class then? You're investing this money and wasting my time." He's like he'd rather you just leave. If you were late, he wouldn't even bother letting you in. He's like, "You're late. You don't care. You don't want it enough, right? You don't want it badly." So
You
it
need
was,
and you need that
yeah,
because the test is so important. And I mean, everyone's taking it, everyone's trying to get in. There's so much competition, and you need that tough love. And I'm sure he wants people to succeed. He doesn't want to entertain anyone who isn't giving 100%, right?
yeah.
And how did you discover this course, by the way? Like, were there testimonials? Were there people you personally knew who had taken his class and done well? Or
Yeah, so I knew a bunch of people who had taken this class prior, but again, because of my financial situation, I couldn't really afford it, right? Up until like you were like driving back and forth, paying for the course, it was quite a bit. And after COVID, it's when he started doing these Zoom meetings, and this is where it became more feasible for me. Like I could start working from home, like doing it from home, being in class. But the class days was twice a week, and it was Sundays and Wednesdays. Sundays, it was 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. for whatever subject that we were going over, which was either Orgo or Gen Chem or Bio.
well, he's Orgo man, right? It has to be the Orgo at least.
Yeah, yeah. So oh my God, when I tell you this man gave you every cheat code to like math, science, like I'm telling you, like there's certain problems where he's just like, think about this question. He's like, this question requires you to do math. He was like, but think about it. Look at the way the question's asking you. He's like, if you understand the concept and you apply it to this question, there's no math required. You know that this is the answer, right? And then he'll also explain why the wrong answers are the wrong answers. So by through a process of elimination, you without a doubt will ultimately get to the right answer, right?
Yeah,
So the
that's
way so it put it he gave you so much confidence into your knowledge, right? That it like what seemed like overkill became so easy,
and
right?
that's important. Building up the confidence is definitely key. And I think you touched on something very important. It's never enough just to know what the right answer is. You learn more by knowing why the other three, if it's a multiple choice, why the other three are wrong. Because sometimes you get lucky. Like some people, and this happened undergrad. Like if I got an exam and I guessed the question and I got it right, I'd be like, oh, that means I know it. No, if you can't prove why the other ones were wrong or explain why those were wrong, then you did not know the entire question. So that's definitely important that he explained why it was right and why it was wrong and built up the test taking confidence.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, after my first time taking my exam, I developed test anxiety. So when I was going through take my second attempt, uh, I'm going to be very real. I got a bit of a tiny anxiety attack in the beginning, not because I was reading a question, but that was just like personally like what I had.
Yeah.
But then I was remembering like, nah, like I really prepared myself for this. Like I prepped hard. I spent months. I made it very fair and even for me. Like I spaced out my time. I kept my social life. I was like, nah, like I'm like in a very healthy state right now. Like I can do this. So I was like, even if I don't know the answer to this question, I'm going to pick what I believe is the best response and not look back and just keep going. Because the minute I started questioning or doubting one question, that's the beginning of my downfall. That's when I start doubting every question. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Just gotta just pick something and then move on. If I don't know it, cool. If I know it, like I obviously will know it. And alhamdulillah, I scored top 1%. I scored an overall 23. And for each subsection, I scored above a 23 besides bio, ironically enough. Right. I scored a 17 in bio, which could be bad, but I mean, realistically, bio is a tough subject and it's very vast. So it's based on like if you got lucky or not. For me, the the majority of my questions from my bio section was all plant based, and that was supposed to be the quote unquote low yield questions, like the less possible to come up, and it ended up being the majority of my questions.
Oh
So I
man.
was like, so I guess it was overlooked in that matter because it was like a bit unrelated to bio. But what's it called? Nonetheless, like that's really a key important factor. It's just your mindset. Like if your state of mind is extremely crucial when you're taking these exams, and having the most amount of confidence within your response and your abilities, and that you've done your work and you've done your best to prepare to that moment.
100%. And I think, anyone watching, you do not want your DAT to be the first time you are taking the DAT. You want to do practice tests ahead of time, proper practice tests, like set aside time, however many hours it is, and simulate the test in real life. Like I know people who would go to the library, they would get one of the conference rooms, whatever, and they would sit down for 3 hours and they would treat it like a real test because there's also that sort of stamina. Like being able to sit for hours is an art, man. So don't let the DAT be the first time you actually take a long test in a proper environment, simulate it a couple of times, build up that tolerance, because some people also get overwhelmed with the reading. Like they read and then the second half of the exam they're like, Muhammad, honestly, like I just was so overwhelmed. I couldn't read anymore, I couldn't think anymore. So and I'm sure Orgo Man had you doing the practice tests and stuff.
Actually, he was very against it. He was more
Oops.
he was more of like, yo, you gotta do just practice problems. He's like, just do practice problems and go over it repetitively. And as you just kept doing it in repetition, and like he has a whole booklet for it, right? And you have to do it like you have to buy it when you start his course. Um, I think that was like the only thing I really ever needed. Like all I had to do was just take those questions and then just keep going at it until like all that information was drilled into my head. And at some point, there was like at least if I'm
Hey, brother Waleed.
there we go. But yeah, I forgot my train of thought.
No, no, it was about just so Orgo Man was against practice.
Oh yes. So yeah, he was very much against timed exams. He thought uh that it prepped you on how to, I guess, get the feel for what the exam is like, but it doesn't prep you for how to answer the questions that are given on the exam.
Interesting. Okay.
So like I could take 7 practice tests and get good with the time, but my school will never get better because I'm not really learning anything.
So the content was more,
It
he
was
wanted to address your ability to handle the content, process it, learn it more than the time, because he figured, you know what, you could probably learn how to time yourself, pace yourself on by yourself. Like that's not the harder hump. The harder hump is the knowledge and being able to pass the
yeah,
test, not take it quickly or whatnot. Okay, so that's definitely good, and I think I'll definitely give information on the Orgo Man course in the description for people who want to, see your living testimony. Alhamdulillah, you got top 1%, got into Temple Dental School, so that speaks to how much the course helped. Um, so you did your undergrad, you worked, got real world experience, and you took the test. um Now you've taken the test. What is the process like what's the portal that people use to apply to dental schools? How did you make your list of dental schools? What was it like applying? What essays were involved? Stuff like that.
uh, it's pretty simple, really. So in terms of setting up your DAT exam,
Yeah.
I have to essentially sign up to the American Dental something association. I forget what the E stands for, right? But ADIA. And then from there, you're gonna get a dent pin, and that is your pin for life. Like you're not supposed to share it. That's like your ID as a dentist, like for your licensure.
Okay.
So when you like insurance company looks for you, like they'll find you through that ID, right? Um, Once you're given that, you pretty much set up an exam date. Um, and from there they take you to once you pay for that, you go to the Prometric Center on their website,
Yep.
and then from the Prometric Center that's where you schedule. So the process to take the exam for the DAT is not similar to that as MCAT. MCAT, there's a certain time frame where you're supposed to take the exam. The DAT is year round. So like for instance, if I go to Adia, I pay for my exam, right? And I go to the Prometric Center, I could basically set up to take an exam tomorrow. Like there's always a spot.
Yeah.
So you could always reschedule. There's always a time where you can reschedule. There's always a time where if you need to cancel in advance, you could cancel. Um, and there's always a place near you, essentially, because where you take your DAT is where every other person is taking their type of exam, such as PCAT, OAT,
Oh, so it's not just DAT then. You're taking it with other students doing other standards.
yeah,
Oh, I did not know that. That's very
yeah,
interesting.
they don't put you in like a room by yourself. You're pretty much in a room, and it's like an office, and your computer's like in a cubicle, and they just space you out. So like you're in one cubicle, there's an empty seat, and then another seat is like where somebody else is at
Is that
taking.
a COVID thing, or they space it out for the test, like just
Yeah,
for eating, or okay, gotcha,
for mostly for COVID,
gotcha.
but the cubicles in and of itself is like pretty big, and they have dividers, so like you really can't see anyone else. But everyone's like taking their own exam, their own time. Like somebody could be taking like their GREs, like just literally like a few seats down. And so DAT is very similar in that manner, right? Um the process in which they do it is like it's pretty much like they just pat you down, they like SAT kind of, maybe even worse. You get there, they give you a locker, they're like, you got nothing on you, can't bring a phone, can't bring your keys, can't bring nothing. I was like, if you have a loose shirt like this, they tell you to button it up or take it off. You can't bring a coat inside. They run you down with a metal detector, and you can't talk at all whatsoever. Right? There's a couple things that you could get away with, right? Such as they give you two laminated sheets of paper. So that's like your only source of writing. And if you need more, you have to pretty much raise your hand and ask for more.
Yeah.
But because you're on a time crunch, you don't want to do that. So it's not technically legal to do this, but people do it regardless because of the time crunch. Like you can make an excuse, it's valid.
Yeah.
Where you just pretty much just rub it off. Like you pretty much rub off like a space that you already used that's no longer needed and just do the problem there. Right. Or you just wipe it down with like a shirt. Like you just literally just do it quickly.
Yeah.
No one will really bother you about it. You're not cheating, you're not doing anything wrong. And also a thing they're really anal about is you touching the computer, like the screen, right? They really do not want you to do that. They
Got
feel they want to avoid any form of like potential cheating. They'll take off like I wear glasses. They'll take off my glasses and investigate my glasses, make sure there's no camera inside.
There's no smart glasses or anything
Yeah,
like that. He's not Googling the answers.
yeah. So like or recording, like we're recording the exam. Um, and that they know that I'm the person taking the exam. So they ask for my license, they ask for my ticket, and they ask for I think for what I believe is a credit card, a debit card, right? That has my name, has my, and they take these, they hold on to it. So I give them this stuff, they hold on to it, and then I go and take my exam. And if I need to use like the bathroom or anything like that, I pretty much just have to raise my hand and say, I gotta use my bathroom. Like I gotta use the bathroom. And you only get a certain time frame to use the bathroom. Right? Like you get like a minute or like 2 minutes.
Oh my God, people are fighting for the life in there, man.
Yeah.
How long
So
was the test, by the way? I mean, I want to know how much people are suffering if they have to hold in.
so the first section is the hardest section. So it's 90 minutes, right? So it's an hour and a half, the first section. So the first section is 40 questions bio. Then the next 30 questions are Gen Chem. And then the last 30 questions are organic chemistry. So you're doing bio, Gen Chem, organic chemistry all in one go. There's there's no stop in between, there's no like breaks. It goes from literally question 40, which is the last bio question, and question 41 is just Gen Chem. Like it just goes straight into the next subject.
There's no transition.
Yeah.
And
So
and when do you get your score, by the way? I mean, do you have to wait like a month, like with the MCAT after your
no.
test?
So for the DAT, the minute you finish your exam, you get your score.
So for better or for worse, whether good news or bad news, you get it right away.
You get it immediately.
That has got to suck. Let me tell you, if someone is like tired, they just finished the test, and then they get like, God forbid, bad news. Yeah, that has got to suck. But likewise, if someone did good and they're getting good news, that's good.
Yeah. One of the things I do recommend is the day you're taking your exam, you're not feeling anxious, right? You're definitely confident and prepared. The day before your exam, don't study. Rest. Just relax, rest. If you're really anxious about studying, just do some note cards, right? Don't do any like learn memorize the basic stuff,
Yeah.
right? Don't go hard in the paint trying to learn new things. Like the time for that is kind of done. Like you're about to take your exam, no need to further stress.
Not
Kind
to,
of like if you were go to the gym, right? And you're lifting weights or working out, you need a recovery period before you work out that same area.
yeah.
So this day before is the recovery period. And when you go to take your exam, you have a really good breakfast that's filled with nutrients, right? Proper nutrients, carbs, protein, and you have one 30-minute break right in the middle of your exam. In that 30-minute break, eat your snacks. Like bring snacks with you, and that they're not like energy drinks, they're not like energy bars, they're actual snacks that are sustainable, right? Like a banana, like some sort of fruit, um, something that can sustain for the next 2-3 hours,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise you're gonna shut down. Like it's gonna happen.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, I've heard the horror stories. I've heard how draining it is, and how long is the test overall?
Uh, it's about so the first section is about 90 minutes. The second section is 60 minutes, which is the perceptual ability. So perceptual ability, there's 90 questions. They're not really questions. They're just pretty much, you know, it's essentially an IQ test. You can't waste more than like 30 seconds on each one because again, it's just like shapes and figures and pretty much figuring out uh example would be like keyhole, right? Pretty much which one best fits into this keyhole or this slot,
Yeah.
right? Or hole punching. If I were to fold this piece of paper a certain amount of times and punch holes in this, what would it essentially look like if I unfold it, right?
That is a hard thing to even think about. I was trying to picture in my head. I'm like, I would not know the answer.
A lot of this just requires a lot of practice, right? So if you were to just spend 10 minutes of your initial study in the beginning and at the very end, right, you're gonna get better regardless. Like you're just training your mind to see the details that you wouldn't normally see, right? And if you just do that, you'll be fine. Like that area is not bad. Um, and then you get the 30-minute break, and then after that you get 60 minutes for reading comprehension. That's supposed to be that honestly was the easiest one. Really didn't take me any time. And also, studies have shown that a high reading comprehension score on your GAT indicates a high grade, or I guess you're more likely to pass your boards. Like there's a higher chance that you will pass your boards. I think the percentage was like at least people who scored a 25 and above on the reading comprehension, right? 90% of those people passed their boards. So they just kind of saw that study that was directly correlated. So, and then uh the last 45 minutes is math, right? And it's nothing past like pre-calculus. The only tedious part is that it's the end of your section. You're most definitely tired and they want you to do math, right? And not only do you have to do math, they give you, I think it's 40 minutes to do 45 questions, like 45 math problems. So you really can't waste your time.
That is criminal, man. That is bad.
Yeah, that was just menace behavior, to be honest.
Man, that was flagrant. That was
Yeah.
disrespectful.
They're like, yeah, we know you're really tired, but like, let's just ruin your day further. Like,
Oh my God.
but
Dude, so this
no,
is this is like a 4 hour affair, man. This is maybe even longer.
yeah. So, as I said before, Orgo Man really prepped me for all of the sciences, and he showed me essentially every cheat code I needed to know for math. So, in the math, you get a tiny calculator that's on the computer. The slowest thing, it'll literally slow you down. It's just better to have mental math, right? Better to know how like to estimate, better to know pretty much just uh like cheat codes uh like 7/14, knowing your fractions, knowing decimals, know how to move your placements, how to do multiplication with decimals and all that other stuff. And basically just repetition, right? Like there's no question that's not in the book that Orgo Man provides you with that you won't see on the exam. So as long as you practice those problems, you'll essentially do well on that exam. And I want to state this again if I haven't stated it already. During my exam, I'd have to say 60% of the book that I used was found in that exam. If not word for word, just slight minor changes. But essentially the question was the same. So like it was just phenomenal. Like I really was like overly prepared for an exam and I did extremely well. And that was like the biggest factor that led to me getting my interviews.
Mashallah. So speaking of interviews, what was the process like of applying to the schools, sending them your new DAT score, and what schools did you apply to, and what made you choose the ones you applied
Um, so I applied to 18 schools and it was all, I have an Excel sheet for this. I could send it to you if you'd like. You can tag it into this podcast.
Yeah, we'll do it.
But essentially it told me the school stats, the school's acceptance rate, their general GPA stats, their science stats, their DAT stats, their scientific average stat for the DAT. It pretty much said every prerequisite that the school required and what was not required. And then on top of that, it was out of state acceptance versus in state acceptance. And then ultimately filtering out the last part, which was how expensive the school was. If it was overly expensive, right? And it wasn't the program that I was essentially looking for, which is pretty much clinical and research.
Yeah.
A lot of schools do focus on different things. Rutgers focuses heavily on clinical. Temple is very well rounded, so they do clinical research as well as uh I guess what is it, like the advancement of like the like dental medicine.
Academic medicine.
Yeah. So in terms of the academics, like you could become a teacher instead of a dentist at Temple.
Yeah.
Right. Um and their schools like Ivy League, right? Their whole thing is just research.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I filtered it. When you apply, it is through a common app. So essentially kind of like the similar common app, like if you were to apply like in Jersey or even out of state,
Yeah.
everything runs through a same system. And then the only difference that you'll get, right, because every primary application is through that common app. If a school likes you, right, you'll get a secondary application. And then that secondary application, that's where like that school is more looking into you more. That's well, you'll probably write a lot more essays if they require it. Sometimes they don't even ask for anything other than your money. Yeah, they just like, here, your secondary application is just $100. And that's pretty much it, right? Like you don't have to do anything more than that. Uh I applied in late July, right? Which is still kind of, it was starting to get late, but still early in the cycle, right? The earlier the better. Um and I'd have to say I got my first interview maybe like 3 weeks after I applied, and it was with Toro. Right, Toro made my interview for November, so at this point it was August. I was like, all right, got my interview in November, right? Um, and um, the next school to email me 4 days later was like Temple. Actually, I didn't start getting anything until November, right? That's when they start looking into people, right? During that time. Because Temple emailed me maybe 2 or 3 days after Toro had emailed me, right? So it was late October, and Temple invited me for an interview, and they were like, Toro was pretty much, they were like, gave me a month in advance to prepare for this interview, and Toro was just like, I mean, Temple was just like, hey, like we like you, you have an interview in 3 days. So I was like, oh snap, like, and the questions they gave me weren't like hard. It was pretty much three main parts, like if I were to break it down. um there were roughly around 10 to 12 questions broken into three parts. The first part was personal questions, like what did I major, why did I go into it, what is the type of person that I am, like very basic like interview questions that you would get for a job. And then the second one was like, why this school, why would you pick this program, what made it interesting. um and like some question, like one of the questions was like, if you could describe using one word, or 5 words or less, why you're choosing Temple, um like what would you say, right? um Honestly, I didn't prepare that well for the Temple interview, but nonetheless, alhamdulillah, I
I'm
got
glad
it.
you got in.
Yeah. But they one of the first thing that came out of my mouth was like proximity, right? If you were to ask me, why, right? This is where your creativity needs to come in. And I'm very much a family man. Like my entire family lives on the same block. Like literally across the street is like one aunt. Right next to that aunt is my other aunt, and then my next door neighbor is my other aunt. So all three of my aunts live on the same block. So I would have used that as an excuse. Like I'm close to my family and I want to still keep that sense of like have that support there.
Yeah.
Like I know that I'm not always going to be 100%, but I know that my family will be there to like pick me up if I'm ever feeling down or whatever or whatnot. Because I know that they're the ones that motivated me and kept pushing me to get to this point. And then the third part of the interview questions was very much ethical. Like it was like scenario based. If you were in this situation, what would you do? Right. I can't really say the questions exactly,
Of course.
but I do recommend that if you search up whatever program you got an interview for, there will always be questions on SND of common questions that they'd ask you during that interview. So so for my second interview, Toro, that's what I did. I went through SND, I saw a bunch of questions and pretty much just bullet pointed what I would say on what are the topics I would use for this question. I got very much the same questions, right? But Toro was honestly way more personal. It was way more relaxed, right? It was more like a conversation between two people. And they tried to make it non-bias, both Temple and Toro. So by non-bias, I mean they don't pick someone from the school. If anything, they pick a doctor. Like that's affiliated with the school, but they have nothing to really do with the school. Right. So the school asks them, hey, could you do this interview for us and ask these questions for us? And the whole thing is recorded and they'll review it if needed, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it was very for Toro, it was it was like no one related to the school. It was just an affiliate, wasn't even an alumni. He just lived around the area and he was a dentist and he was just pretty much asking me very general questions like why I got into it. And honestly, it just turned into a regular conversation. Like I started asking him questions. I was like, what got you into this? Right. And he
Flip the
started telling me
script.
about his life.
You have to flip the script on them.
Yeah, so like it was like the key factor is prepare, but keep your authenticity. As long as you're authentic and true to who you are, right? And you maintain that frame, you're gonna do extremely well. Again, if you get an interview, whether it's medical school or dental school, you're getting an interview because they took interest in you now, right? If I were to apply this to dating, right? You're talking through whatever Instagram, Bumble, Twitter, whatever it may be, right? And you get that first date. It's obviously because they took interest in you now, and they just want to see that you're a person,
Yeah.
right? And that you're not just lying or catfishing, right? So
Because the guy, the student who applies on paper is interesting on paper, right? They had the numbers, the GPA, the extracurriculars. But a lot of people are good on paper. Then in real life, they might be awkward. They might come across a certain way. So yeah,
yeah,
the school wants to make sure, yeah, this guy is as good as he says he is.
yeah, precisely.
And besides Toro and Temple, did you interview anywhere else?
No, I only applied. Well, I applied to 18 schools, but um, once again, it's through a common app, from what I've been told. I don't know if it's legit, but they can see what the schools can see what other schools you've applied to.
Yeah.
Right. So uh they'll notice if I committed, like right, it'll say give an offer to this student or to this applicant, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So it'll say that in like your summary in your common app. And then once you submit your deposit that you're committed,
Oh, then they're like, he's gone. Like he's already
Yeah,
cleared.
it says accepted, right? So every other school is like, all right, rejected, 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 rejected. Like
Oh
only
man.
Toro was like, yeah, we can wait list you. And I was just like, yeah, I don't want to take that risk. Like I already got an acceptance. That's all I need.
Were there any schools that you were kind of and I'm not gonna have you insult Temple or anything. I know you're very excited. You love the school. You talked a lot about the school. But were there any other schools that you were kind of like, they rejected you because you committed to Temple, but you're kind of like, man, I kind of wish I had at least an interview or I got to see the school, anything like that.
To be honest, the only three schools I was really going for was Toro, uh, Temple,
Obviously, yeah.
and Rutgers, right? Those were the three closest ones, and those and Toro is just like Temple, right? Except that they're just new,
Yeah.
right? That school started in 2016.
But the university is old, and I think that's
Yeah,
definitely a takeaway. That
yeah,
the dental school might be new, but the school that owns it has been around for a while, and they have the formula down.
exactly, exactly. But the only difference was between Temple and Toro was that Toro has like the state of the art everything,
Yeah.
right?
New
And they
facilities. Yeah.
and they make sure that you're well off after your career, right? So I remember talking to before they interview you at Toro, they literally sit you down with D3 and D4 students, right? 15 minutes before your interview so that you can get comfortable and that they tell you, hey, like there's no need to worry. Uh Nothing's gonna go wrong. They picked you for a reason because you're a genius. Like you're all geniuses. Like that's why you're all here right now. Right. So they literally removed and like alleviated you in that sense. But a lot of them were telling us like they have like over 80 patients, right? They have over 80 patients, and those patients are theirs, right? They have a whole like card the school gives them. So like, but when they finish and graduate, those patients can choose to continue with the school or to continue to leave with him, right? Like if he goes for his residency or whatever, like they can just follow him to wherever program he goes, or they can just continue with the school.
That's
And then
amazing, man. To set you up, like you're building your network, you're building your patient base, like in school. That's
Mhm.
good. That's great.
Yeah. So I believe Temple does something very similar, right? But it's just the state of it's just the equipment, right? The equipment, the knowledge, the teaching. I feel like everything was just state of the art. That's not to say like, right, Temple's not as great, right? But Temple was my second choice school.
Yeah.
But even though it's my second choice school, I knew it was still among the like one of the better ones out of all the options that I picked.
Yeah, yeah. Clinically, I mean, in Philly, it just, the good thing with the state schools, whether medical or dental, is that they often have the free clinics or then, for the students to get a lot of exposure to diversity and a lot of pathology and issues that, you're going to find with the uninsured or underinsured. So Temple definitely has sort of a chokehold in Philly because I think it's the only state dental school there, if not the only dental school, period. I don't know if UPenn or Thomas Jefferson have dental schools, but I think they're both private anyway.
Yeah, UPenn has one. They're constantly telling me to finish my application, but UPenn is a private dental school,
Yeah, yeah. See, Ivy
and
League, it's a private.
they actually ask you if you were to accept. They inform you that the pricing of the school. They'll actually tell you that you'll probably be in debt like close to 600,000. Is this something you're willing to take? Right? Because that's extremely expensive.
Oh man, that
So,
that is disheartening, man. That is disheartening.
uh,
So tell me something, man. When you got the acceptance from Temple, what was that like? What was that celebration?
oh, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. My first reaction when I got accepted to, even when I got my interview, as soon as I saw that interview or like the email, I literally went and prayed. I went into sujood and I prayed 2 rakah, right? Immediately. I forget what was the reason. One of my friends was like, "Yeah, if you ever have good news, just pray 2 rakah and make sure that you say Alhamdulillah during sujood, right? That you got the thing that you got." because Allah can easily take it away.
Yep.
So um you always have to show gratitude for those good news.
Yeah.
Um but to me it was like the most surreal feeling. Like I've been trying to strive for this like since 2019, right? Like I didn't think I was gonna get to this point. Like I thought I was really close to just giving up. But I was like, nah, like this, I don't find myself being happy with anything else that I do other than this. Like this is where I find my passion, my work. This is where I encompass like my entire uh pretty much like the only way I can see my identity fit with.
It's your passion. It's what you see yourself doing, and no one should ever settle for anything less. And it's disheartening when I see people who are in careers that they're not passionate about, and sometimes they have good reasons. Like they'll say, "Look, Mohammed, I work in this. I work in, I don't know, business or finance. I use my day job. Like you're not supposed to enjoy your work. I use my day job to fund my hobbies or my interests, my travel, my family stuff, and that's okay, right? Not to diminish them. I don't think if you don't like your job, I'm not insulting you, but I think it's even better if your 9 to 5 is you're also happy then and you're happy at home, right?
Yeah,
You shouldn't just So
it
it's
really, it really, it really makes like it really affects your life, right? You're spending the majority of your daily life at work, as odd as that may sound, right? If you don't like what you're doing and you're always bitter for like 8 hours straight, right? For like 5 days a week, when you get home, you're not going to get rid of that feeling. You're going to stay stuck being in that position. And I didn't want that. Like I personally didn't like I noticed it too. Like I was going through that. Like with my other jobs, I was getting paid extremely well, but I was just simply not happy doing what I was doing. Right.
your supervisors are gonna watch this. They're gonna be like, damn.
Yeah. I was working in big pharma at this point and I was like making $40 an hour. And like it was kind of like one of those things where you're overly paid and underworked. And even then, like it just doesn't satisfy you. It doesn't satiate the hunger that you have, the drive, the ambition, all of that. Is I just personally for me, I don't like conforming.
Yep.
That's I guess that's the word I would use.
And let me ask you something, inshallah. I know we have like about 5 minutes left. Are there any pearls of wisdom, advice, comments that you have for pre-dental students? Anything for the ones who are having maybe a difficult time in college?
Um, yeah, it's to form discipline, right? You could be motivated one day and you could be demotivated the next day. But as long as you have the discipline and the drive and you remember that your goal, right, you'll get to that goal. If it's not this way, right, as I read Atomic Habits, if you don't get your goal, then the problem isn't the goal that you set, right? It just may be the path to where you want to get to your goal. It's the system, right? The way you get to your goal, right? So all you have to do is just change that system, and maybe through that route, you'll get to your goal. And if it's not that one, then change it again, right? But as long as you keep that discipline, you'll honestly win every single time. And honestly, this was actually one of the questions that I got for dental school was what do you believe that motivation is a key factor in dental school? And that was my response, right? Motivation can come and go. I could go to work one day motivated and the next day not. But I know at the end of the day, I got to go to work. It's my duty, it's my job, it's my responsibility, right? And similarly, if I'm passionate about something and if I really care about it, right? There's going to be days where I'm going to fall and be like, nah, I'm just going to give up, right? But as long as you keep that discipline and you be like, nah, like I got to push through it and got to get it done. I'm not pushing, I'm not putting it aside. If I do it now, like I'm guaranteed to succeed in the next day, right? So it's extremely crucial to have that mindset.
I think
Um,
that's so important. That's definitely
yeah. I'd also recommend reading a lot, right? And it's in a variety of things, right? Whether it be spiritual, self-help, or just basic knowledge that you want to learn, right? The more you read, the more you can talk about, right? And the more that you can talk about, the more, what's the word for it? I want to say social skill, right? You'll have more to talk to people with. You'll build a better interpersonal relationship, and that's not. And the more knowledge you have, the more you can connect with people, right? I am now part of the convert committee board for ICPC. Um, and there was one guy, he came in, he honestly told me, I'm here not because I want to convert. Like, I don't understand why people want to force me to convert. I'm like, yo, dog, like, honestly, if you're here just to learn, that's just as great, right? Because there's a lot of misconceptions that happen around Muslims in general.
Yeah.
So as your part as a human being, right, you're doing your part by learning about this aspect of humanity and clearing up the misconceptions. And then from here, this is when you do your part and you explain to other people this. And this is how you connect with others as well. Right. So I really think just reading in general and learning is very crucial in any aspect of your life.
And I like that you gave this advice because I like when answers or advices that are given are reusable. They apply everywhere, and it's not your advice is for everyone. It's not just for dental students. Really, anyone will succeed if they have discipline. Anyone will do well if they are well read, if they build their social capital, they connect with people. Because ultimately, I mean, the people you're connecting with today, you might just think, oh, why should I connect with my fellow college freshmen, sophomore, juniors? But guess what, man? These are the future doctors. These are the future lawyers. These are the future engineers. Like that. You have to look at where these people are going. I remember working in an office, and I would always look down on my fellow workers because I was like, oh, I'm going to be in management one day. Why socialize with these guys? 10 years later, the office workers I'm playing around with, they're just sticking pencils up their nose, whatever. They're all directors now. And I'm like, shoot. So,
Yeah.
building connections is key. Building good habits is key. And it doesn't start. Some people think, oh, college is sort of, I'm studying all this stuff I don't care about. I'm studying the gen eds. I'll be more serious in dental school because that's my passion. But that's a bad way to think because your discipline starts now, and you need to take everything seriously, right? Like you said, motivated or demotivated, you still got to go through the motions. You still got to do it. And I'm glad that you. Oh, we have a minute left. I'm glad that you, Alhamdulillah, brother Waleed, you made time, and because I think there's not enough Muslim positive role models. I've looked on YouTube, and you'll sometimes see some med students or dental students have like the day in the life videos or follow me, but I noticed I didn't see a lot of them being Muslim. And once people go into dental school, man, you don't really see them at the masjid, or you don't see them making time for the youth and telling them my experience, how I took the tests, how I did my classes, what dental school application interviewing was like. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time, man. I appreciate that. Inshallah, I'll be dropping your LinkedIn or any info on you in the summary. I'll mention some of the books and your courses, and inshallah, I just want to say thank you for making the time.
No, no, thank you for inviting me. Honestly, it was an experience and a pleasure.
All
It was
right,
fantastic, honestly.
all right, thank you, brother. Painless as possible.
Yeah.
All right, jazakallah khair, brother. Assalamu
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.